Welcome to Something to Talk About, which is a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and sometimes even more than that, get together here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, and it is sponsored by Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care at their lovely campus on Rolling Bay. If you'd like to take a tour, or if you'd like to learn about their day stay and respite programs, jot down this phone number, 360-689-4314. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, most specifically our neighbors, the Suquamish tribe, the people of the clear salt water. We honor them and we are grateful for their hospitality. And today is edition 2 of Tech Talk with Chen. John, thank you very much for joining us again this month.
Wow, happy to be here.
So what have we got in store for today?
Well, last week we talked about different pieces of devices and phones and etc. And this time we're going to talk about some terminology or words that's normally used or you will hear. And we're going to cover from how a device in your hand actually gets to the internet and what really is internet, and some of the basics about how to keep your phone or email or website secure. And I may not go into a lot of detail, but I'll go into enough detail so you will understand it. And if you'd like to know more about it, just pop me a note. And also, if there are any topics that you'd like me to talk about in the future sessions, also drop me a note. And if you have any questions while we're going through this session, go ahead and raise your hand. And depending on the question, I'll either answer right there or I'll just defer towards the end of the session. So, any questions? All right, I'll start. We normally have these devices on the left. Some of us may have a flip phone. Here we have a smartphone of some kind, whether it be an iPhone or an Android phone or any other kind of smartphone. Over here, we have a tablet of some kind or a watch. So these are all personal devices that's mobile. We carry them around. Here we have a computer of some kind. In this case, this is a laptop. And it could be a desktop, it could be a workstation, but it is a computer of some kind. We have a printer and we have the TV set. These are the things, some of these things are the items that we do own and we carry around. How do these devices actually get to internet? All right. Top left, we have a flip phone. A flip phone talks to a cellular tower. That is its primary duty. Some of the newer flip phones will be able to make use of Wi-Fi. And by the way, we are not on the internet at this point. All we're doing is connecting to some kind of wireless service. You notice that there's a blue line here and a red line here. Blue line means majority of the flip phones are going to be using cellular, meaning you pay your money. Every time you open up that phone, you are connected to a cellular network and you are paying some kind of minutes to the wireless carrier. Some of the newer one does make use of Wi-Fi, but this is far and few in between. A smartphone can talk to either a cellular network or a Wi-Fi. Whoops. Wi-Fi usually is free, well, somewhat free. If you're at the senior center, you can connect to the senior center Wi-Fi and you can do things on the internet without having to pay anything. But if you're not at the senior center, let's say you're walking down Winslow Way, you'll be connected to some kind of cell tower and you're paying minutes. Then we have tablets and watches. Majority of the tablets and watches uses Wi-Fi only. Depending on if the owner paid extra money to get a cellular chip, that device will be able to use cellular, but most people don't. Most people use these devices on a Wi-Fi network. Laptops, computers, usually they only talk to a Wi-Fi network. Printer, it can connect to a Wi-Fi network, or the printer is physically connected by a little cable from the printer to a computer. TV set can connect to a Wi-Fi or connected to a cable, and the cable connects to Xfinity or any of your cable TV companies. So mainly there is cellular and Wi-Fi. You'll also hear some other terms thrown around. One is called Bluetooth. Bluetooth is used for device to talk to other device, not using cellular or not using Wi-Fi. In other words, if I have a phone and you have a phone, we can talk to each other without connecting to anything other than to each other. NFC, which stands for near field communication, that is what grocery stores have. When you check out, at the checkout station, you can take your credit card, tap the cash register, a little unit on the cash register, and you can charge your purchases. So NFC is, again, a device to a device, but it is usually very, very close. You have to be within inches. Bluetooth can be, the devices can be 40, 50 feet apart. So again, we're not yet on the internet. Cellular connects to some kind of ISP, which is Internet Service Provider. Again, we're still not on the internet. These are the cellular companies, AT&T, CenturyLink, T-Mobile, Verizon, or if you're in Canada, you have Rogers or TELUS. Then we have other ISPs like Consumer Cellular, Cricket, TracFone, Jitterbug. They don't have their own equipment. They buy leftover or extra capacity from these main suppliers. And then these companies then take those minutes and sell it to the consumer at a cheaper price. So these are the ISPs. And so when you have a phone of any kind, you're actually talking to a cellular tower. The tower is connected to one of these companies. If you're using Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi goes to not a tower, but a router or a modem somewhere in your home or somewhere at the senior center. Or grocery store will have it, Starbucks coffee will have it, and many, many places will have a router. That router is connected to some cable company. In this case, it could be connected to Xfinity, or Comcast, or Wave Cable. These companies have an actual physical line either buried in the ground or through the telephone pole on the street and connected to your house or connected to the senior center or connected to Safeway. Then there are some others down here, which are satellite. You have DirecTV, HughesNet, Starlink, and these are extremely slow, and usually they're only purchased or leased if you're unable to get cable. Okay, again, we're not on the internet yet. Now, this part is the actual internet. So all of these people sitting at these devices will either go through cellular or Wi-Fi to get to a wireless carrier or a cable carrier, and they will go to the end service provider. In this case, if you want to go to Amazon, Apple, Google, Gmail, Hotmail, all of these are what we call websites. And here are some more. All of these, like King5, Cairo7.com. Then we have another group of websites. And for example, BI Senior Center, something.org, or Washington State Parks.org, or NPR.org. Or you can go to Washington.gov, that means Washington State's government, or IRS. And most universities and schools will have edu at the end. And for this, in this example, we have UW. So you'll notice that we have different suffix: com, org, gov, edu. We then have, in this case, bcparks.ca. That's Canadian. CA stands for Canada. BC Parks is British Columbia Parks Department. Or in this case, we have UKTV.country in UK. That's in England. So the suffix here determines where they are, and that's important. And in a little bit, I'll talk about that. Okay. Now that we have a general idea of what these are, we have to be, hang on a second. So any questions on what I just went over? Do you get a general idea on where your device is actually located versus where the websites are and all the players in between? All right. And I forgot that I need to go back to, okay, well, back to this chart. Let's say you are sending a text from you to your neighbor. You are using one of these devices, a smartphone, and you're home. So you are using a Wi-Fi, and that message of the text that you just sent to your neighbor goes to a router, goes to Xfinity, then goes to someplace over here, depending on what you're using. that text turns around, may go back a different route. Let's say it may go to Verizon and then goes to a cell tower, and then will go from the cell tower to your neighbor on her device or his device. Now, from looking at this chart, going from here to here is usually pretty short, as you can tell from this drawing. But that distance could be thousands of miles. Because let's say if I am using some service to send messages, let's say I use Apple, and I'm using an iPhone, send a message to here, to Apple. And that Apple location could be in the United States, or that location could be in Europe. It turns around and comes back through Verizon cell to your neighbor. And that route, again, could take thousands of miles to get from here to here. So even though you are sending to your neighbor next door, if that message could have traveled thousands of miles to get to your neighbor. And it goes through many, many pieces of equipment to go from your house to your neighbor's house. So for that reason, it is extremely complex, and all you need is a tiny little piece of equipment that's not working. Your message is not going to get through. All right. So, all right. Because of that, your phone is now contains a lot of your personal information. I have, working with a lot of people, I have seen individuals put a password on their phone, and the password is 1234 or 123456. Right. That's not wise. And I would advise picking something else, picking something you can remember, something complex. If you have to, you can write it down. But at the same time, don't pick something that's so complex that you have to look it up every time you want to get at that password. Pick something like, I don't want to say use your birthday, because that's too easy. If somebody knows your birthday, they can get into your phone. But at least switch them around. Right? Maybe instead of using month, day, year, put day, month, year, and put some characters in between, like 05, XX, JAN, ABC, 1980, all right? And make it as complex as you can without you having to look it up every time. You can also use something called a password manager. All right. Many people, after they use internet for a while, they may have hundreds of passwords. That gets really complex to remember. And you don't want to have to go to a notebook trying to track hundreds of passwords. And the password manager usually is fairly cheap. It's about $1 or $2 a month. All right. And so with that password manager, all you have to do is remember the main code, the main passcode to get into, for you to talk to that password manager. From that point on, the password manager will remember every website you go to, and it will remember the password you use for each one of those websites. So that's a cheap insurance. Another thing that's even cheaper, if you happen to use an Apple product, that is using something Apple calls a keychain. It comes with Apple devices like an iPhone or a tablet, and it does the same thing as a password manager. It will again remember the password you used, or it will take one step further. It will create a password for you, so you don't have to think it up. And you'll create I think, you'll create a 20-digit long, what I call gobbledygook, meaning different characters all mashed together. All right, you can't make heads and tails out of it, but it's 20 characters long. And you don't have to remember it. The keychain will remember it. And just for discussion's sake, if there's a password that's 20 digits long, it would take probably 400,000 years for someone to crack. All right, that's longer than you and I can live. So it's pretty safe that no one's going to crack it, and it's free. But if you don't have an Apple product, then you need to look for some kind of password manager, and for $1 or $2 a month. And if you have very few passwords, then yes, go ahead and you can create your own password, but don't pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as your password. All right. How do we keep our emails secure? All right. We get lots of emails. Just like every time I go to the mailbox or every time I go to my PO box, 80% of the stuff I get in there are junk, or at least advertisements, or things I really don't care about. And on a daily basis, I'll probably get 30 to 40 junk mail. So I just throw them away. But when you get a junk mail, or when you get a mail, how do you know it's junk? Right. On the paper mail, you can open the envelope, you can look at it, you say, oh, I don't want this, throw it away. With email, it's a little bit more trickier because they can make a fake email and make it look like it's real. All right. I have some examples. Back to this foil. Okay, in this case, I have an email from Hawaiian Airlines. And I have blocked out a few account number info here. That's why you see the strikeout here. But this looked like a normal email. And the key here is look at the email address where they're sending it from. It looks like Hawaiian Miles. The key here is this little, tiny little down arrow. And when you open up email, you look for that down arrow and you click the down arrow and it will show up as Hawaiian Airlines at email@hawaiianairlines.com. By looking at that, you can guess it's pretty legitimate. And also it's a company or a business that you'd normally do business with. Now let's take a look at another one. Here is Yeti Hopper Backpack Cooler. It looks legit. They want a customer verification. And again, I go to this little down arrow. When I tap on that down arrow, that is the email address they're sending it from. You'll see it's just jumble of numbers. I have no idea how long it is. And at provincial.com, I have no idea if they're real or not. I have never done business with them, but one look at that long email address they're sending it from, you know it's garbage. Another example. All right, from an email for FHA. By the way, all of these emails I have saved on my email just as an example to show that I have one from FedEx, Post Office, Best Buy. You'll notice that they wrote it as BES@tbuy.com. So the second you see something like that, you know it's fictitious. Okay, we'll look at this one. FHA.com. I'll tap on that little down arrow, and it says it's actually from admin at what's it say? nkdimmi.it. All right. IT is a suffix used for people sending email from Italy. So it's not too likely this is real. Okay.
John,
Yeah.
how did you get to that little arrow? How do you make that come up?
What you do is go to where the email address is located and hover over that. And do you, what software are you using?
We have an Apple, so whatever. I don't even know.
Okay. Now, what I've shown you is using Apple Mail, meaning the mail that comes with the Apple software. And every software is slightly different. You may be able to double click or right finger click on the mouse over the email address. And you may have a pop-up which will show you an option that says display email or copy that email. Mm-hmm. And I right now don't have a way I can easily show you from another system, but I can prepare something that I will show you next time when we get on the Zoom session. Every piece of software on your computer is slightly different. That means in order for me to show all the examples, what I may try to do is use, I'll try to download different software like a Google Mail and show you what the true email addresses are. So that's a to do for me for next time. And okay, another thing that is pretty general that applies to any person that has an email, that is, I would highly recommend every person have more than one email address. Right. And there's a good reason for that. If you have only one email address and you give that email address freely to your close friends, your relatives, your doctor, and the stores that you shop at, or quite often you'll go and to a little coffee shop and they said, do you want me to send you your receipt by email? So you give that, your one and only email, to that coffee shop. Now, let's say that email address gets hacked, meaning some bad person got hold of it and starts sending you tons of junk mail. How do you get out of that? You can't. The only way for you to get out of it is stop using that email address and create a brand new one, and be very careful about who you give that new email address to. Okay. And you may have given that one single email address to tens of people, hundreds of people. And for you to change it, it's a nightmare. And so what I have done, my wife and I, we use somewhere around 15 different email addresses. We have one that we only give to our relatives and friends. Another one we use for like our insurance companies, our doctors, and let's say the senior center. And another one we give to iffy, like coffee shops. Right. And like when you, let's pick Safeway. When I go to Safeway, I use a Safeway membership card that has an email address attached to it, and they frequently will send me specials. That email address may get hacked. I'm not saying Safeways will get hacked, but when you give an email address to a business, frequently that business may get hacked and your email address may get stolen. And then I have another email address to give to people that I know I don't trust, but they want one anyway. So I'll give that one to them. So now, if one email address gets really messy with tons of email, junk email, I just cancel it. Now, if you're on an Apple device, what you could do is they have a thing which is called Hide My Email. So they don't give out. So for example, you get on internet and you go to this website, and that website wants you to register before you can look at anything. So you use Apple's Hide My Email, which gives out a fictitious email address, but any email you get from there gets routed to your real address. So think of that as a middleman. So if you have to sign up at 10 different places, and Apple will give you 10 fake email addresses, all forwarded to your real one. So if one of the fake email addresses start to get a lot of spam, you just kill it and create a new one. It's free. And versus the way we're doing it, which sometimes is a pain in the neck, which is we have to remember, oh, this store, this type of store, we give this email address to. When we first started using email years ago, my wife and I, each of us has one email address. So over time, it was a lot of work. Over time, we now have about 15. And just remember, all the email addresses are essentially free. You can get a free one. If you get a Google email address that ends with gmail.com, you can get another one. You can get 10 more if you wish. All right. So
How do you do that? How do you do that?
You go to the Google website where you normally sign on to Google, normally sign on to Google Mail, instead of putting in your real address somewhere on the screen, you'll have, let's say, what did you do the very first time?
I don't remember. That's why I'm asking.
You'll essentially do the same thing. Somewhere on that screen, it will say, sign on with your ID, or I am a new user, I want to create an ID.
Oh,
So you just create a new ID, pick a new password, and pick something that you can remember. It's going to be used for iffy businesses. All right. So,
thank you.
so that's handy. For junk email, I get about 20, 30 a day. I get really brutal. I'll go through that list, and the software on your computer or on your phone or Gmail or Yahoo, they have a fairly good programming that will automatically take certain emails and throws it into a junk email folder. They are not perfect. So sometimes a good email will accidentally go into that same junk email folder. So you just need to go through to say, yeah, they did a good job. All the email in my junk email folders are really junk. Great, I'll just get rid of them. If for some reason an email from a good source got into junk, you can move it from that junk folder to your good inbox. Okay. And when I say my wife and I have 15 email addresses, every day we don't go to 15 different places to retrieve our email. That's what the software on your device is doing. The software on your device, whether it be phone or tablet or a computer, it can go to all 15 places, retrieve the email, and put it all together into a single place for you to look at. So if you use the one software on your phone, that one piece of software can contain email from all different places, which will simplify how you manage all those and read all the email from different places.
Okay, so I have a question, John. So
Yeah.
I have all the spam stuff that's come into my regular email that I've had for all these years, the regular one on the main. How do I get off of that email? How do I get away from them knowing that that's my email and to put in a new one?
Okay. Each website is going to be different. All right. Let's take Safeway, for example. Safeway, I have an email address with Safeway. So I have to get onto the Safeway website, and where it will say, usually say profile, user profile. I'll go into that little tab, and it will say, what email address are you using right now? What do you want your new email address to be?
Okay.
You can change it. And yes, it's complex. It means you have to go to every single website that you normally go into the profile section and change that email. So if for some reason you only have a single email address that you give out to everybody, that means if you want to change that one single email address to somebody else, you got to go to every single place. You got to send an email to every single friend that says, oh, my old email address isn't any good anymore. I'm going to switch to this new one. You want to do that as infrequent as you can. And if you have some specific challenges with some of the websites, I know some of the websites, they really hide it, and it's not easy to go into the profile and change the email address. So if you want to solve some specific issues, just go ahead and come on in and set up a session with me on one of the Mondays over at the Senior Center. And I can sit down with you and help you change as many as time allows. And you can learn from that, and then you can change the rest of them. Okay. All right. Phone calls. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're getting a little close. Phone calls. I used to get a lot of worthless or spammer phone calls on my phone. And then a few years ago, Apple said, okay, we're giving you a new feature that says you can flip a switch that says anybody who's calling me, but that person's number is not in my contact list, I don't want to answer it. So we turn it on, but that also means anybody we want to communicate with or we're expecting a phone call from, that person's phone number has to be in my contact list. All right, so I had to expand my contact list. The challenge with that is, let's say I'm talking to my banker, and I said, okay, call me about this issue. I don't know what number he's going to use to call me. So if my banker says, okay, I'll call you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Prior to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I will flip that switch and it will allow all the calls to come in, to ring on my phone. After I'm finished talking to that person, I'll flip the switch again and say, I don't want anybody to come through. Now, let's say I forgot to flip that little switch and the call comes in from a legitimate person. That person is going to get a voicemail. Remember, that phone call doesn't just simply go away. Right? That person's phone call will come in, my phone doesn't ring, it will go straight to voicemail and my phone will light up that says, I have a voicemail. I can listen to it. After I listen to it, I can say, oh, that's junk. I can delete it. If it's not, let's say it's my banker, I can call him back. You remember the times, I think we all of us are along the same age. Do you remember when there's only one or two phones in the house? Usually one is in the kitchen with a long cord. And every time that phone rings, everybody in the house will say, I got it, I got it. Okay. It took my wife and I, both of us, it took us a while to wean us off of that. Whenever the phone rings, right now these days, we don't answer it. Let it go to voicemail. I can listen to the voicemail. If it's important, I'll call them back. If it's junk, I'll delete it. Okay, so the challenge with this is obviously to be able to build your contact list with numbers that you know phone calls may be coming in from, so your phone will actually ring. So silencing unknown callers is a great tool. My phone now, these days, never rings, and whenever it does ring, we know it's somebody legitimate. Okay. And like I said, companies, organizations, they may have more than one number, especially doctor's office, banks. And so you just have to just change your processes a little bit. Any question on that one? Okay.
I have another question that maybe I should come in and talk to you about, but I have Comcast and I have email, landline, and the computer. Well, what's the other one? Anyway, I have 3 different things with them. I'd like to get rid of Comcast. The price has gone up and up and up, and I'm wondering how to do that. I know I can, jettison my landline because I have a cell phone, but how do you keep your internet if you wanted to do that?
There are a bunch of alternatives. Some of them may not be cheap. Some of them may not be as fast. All right. And some of them may not be as convenient. If you want to get rid of Comcast or any cable company, one thing you can do is, one, you can always travel to the local Safeway or local Starbucks to get your email. All right. That's one way to get your internet connection. You can come to Senior Center. Or depending on which plan you have on your cell phone. Some of the cell phone plans will allow you to create something that's called a hotspot. And meaning your phone can create a hotspot, which means you can connect from your tablet or computer to your phone, and your phone will connect to a tower, and the tower will connect to the internet. But you have to make sure the cost of having a hotspot on your phone is cheaper than using Xfinity. Another method is try to reduce the speed you have with Xfinity. Right? They have a whole bunch of different levels. Some are very expensive, but gives you a very fast internet. Other plans will have a very slow speed, but slow speed is all relative. Depending on what you're doing on internet, a slow speed may be perfectly okay. All right. And so a lot of times we think, oh, the more we get, the better off we are. And that's it's sometimes true, but not always. Sometimes depending on what you do, what you need to do on your device, like on your phone or tablet or computer, you don't need a lot of capacity. If what you want to do is you have 4 or 5 people in your family, everyone want to watch their own movie on their own device, well, you're going to need a lot of capacity. But you don't watch a lot of movies, and you don't use your computer for a lot of complex upload and download. A very basic plan will probably do. So it really depends. And yeah, go ahead and schedule and come in on one of the Mondays, schedule a session with me. And by the way, we'll also have students from Bainbridge High, and they are quite good, and they can also help out.
Yeah, the big thing now that I'm thinking about it is the television. I watch sports and news, and so I'm thinking about that. If I could, the phone and the internet, I understand that, but the television is the one I'm trying to figure out.
So I would say, I mean, if you don't mind me jumping in here, I would suggest that one thing you can always do with these companies is you can call them and threaten them that you're thinking of moving. And they often will lower your price for a year to try to keep you from backing out. You also can tell them that you want to get rid of the landline, but you want to keep the cell and the landline, but you want to keep the internet as part of it.
Mhm.
And actually Comcast will, you can actually have, they will provide now, Xfinity will provide cell service. So you might be able to say, I want to switch my cell service, but I want to drop my landline and I want a lower cost. And they have a lot of latitude to give temporary discounts under their listed price. And then they just seem to go up over 5 or 6 years. Suddenly you're paying more than your neighbors.
You don't want to drop your landline.
There may be alternatives. For example, you can have a landline from CenturyLink. You can have a landline, pretty much that's it, is if you want a landline. But you can have a landline phone connected to Xfinity. So in other words, from your Xfinity box, on the back of it, you actually plug in a telephone. Okay, so that's a complex topic, and there are a lot of options.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that I did learn, I have consumer cellular, and you really want the number. So I think they can do that. I'm pretty sure they can do that. You could still have your landline number and it would ring on your cell.
Yes.
So
You can transfer your number and you can move it from a landline to a cell number. You just have to do it from the beginning of the contract. Otherwise, you can't reclaim it.
Yeah.
And also, depending on the kind of phone you have, most cell phones can only have one number.
Mhm.
And that means if you transfer your landline phone to your cell phone, that means you have to drop one number. But Reed came up with a good number of suggestions, and all of them will work. And you just have to negotiate and see what you can get from them. But I'll be glad to sit down with you and look at the plan that you currently have and look at the needs that you have, and we can maybe come up with something.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And what other questions do you have?
Well, we've kind of hit our 1 minute mark. Marcy, did you have something you wanted to add? You need to unmute.
Yeah, I wanted to just remind us that we do have a company on the island that uses Kitsap PUD. And that is very definitely an option. And that's what I'm using. So that's my internet server. And I did give up my landline quite a while ago. I don't know if he serves as also as landline access or not, but the Kitsap PUD needs to be supported and used. And that's what the city is also using.
They're expanding onto Bainbridge.
They've been here for quite a while.
Yeah, and they're definitely a good option for you to look at. But it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
Okay, if no other questions, and if you do have questions, pop me a note. I'll add it to next month's session, and glad to have all of you sit in with us and You don't have anything else? Thanks for joining us.